those of you who don't know, I'm the editor of the Reporter Examiner. I don't usually give speeches, I usually have to write about these things, so it'll be a little more difficult tonight. I got into journalism really because I wanted to tell stories. It's when you go to school for it, they tell you immediately, if you're looking to get rich quick, you want to get out now because you're not going to ever. So it's sort of disappointing in that regard that you're never actually going to make a lot of money. But it's really a labor of love. And I got into community journalism because I have this strong distaste of sensationalist news that dominates the daily newspaper world. And I prefer the more community building type of thing where you can go and visit people and learn their stories and tell them to a community who really want to support that person. And that's really what I love doing here, and it's how it's how I was able to make a name for myself pretty early on. So another reason I got into community journalism was because the major newspapers are struggling, as you've probably seen. They don't have the ability to, they don't have this built-in advertising revenue that the community papers do, where there's not a lot of advertising places. There's not a lot of places to advertise if you're in a rural or small to medium-sized city, like here in Spruce or Stony. So if you can't target people through online advertising, the best way to do that is in the newspaper. And for the time being, community newspapers are thriving on that. So I'm from Vancouver. So I'm from Vancouver, and I set out on my prairie journey a few years ago. I moved to a small oil town called Lloydminster on the Saskatchewan border. I was actually living in Saskatchewan the whole time I was there, about 20 feet from the border, which was kind of nice. And the city really has a special place in my heart. But when I arrived, it was pretty difficult, I gotta say. I didn't know anybody, and I felt like an outsider. I couldn't find my niche. It wasn't until I started taking on more and more stories and learning more about the community that I found out why I wanted to be in journalism, as I mentioned, the community building type of thing. And I started to realize just how generous that community was. Lloydminster has a bad reputation, even among people who live there. They look down on it, they think it's boring, they're always trying to get out. But I found there were people there who really loved that city. And I was able to tell their stories, and it was really fun. So while our competition focused on creating controversy and tearing people down, we did a much better job of finding positive stories, and we made it our goal to show the community just how great it was. It was too easy to look down on it, so we went out and found the stories that made the community what it was. And that's how I realized what my news philosophy had to be. I'm thankful I had an editor at that time who allowed me to do that. You know, some editors won't. They won't let you go out and do the fluff news. They'll say you got to cover hard news all the time. And I'm thankful we were in a position where we could go about news that way. We didn't have to bring ourselves down to the lowest common denominator all the time, which would have been frustrating for me. But I couldn't stay there forever. So I moved on pretty quick. I moved on to Airdrie after that, and even after a few months there, I realized I had to move on again once I got this job offer. So the Reporter Examiner came calling, and I jumped at it. I'd never been an editor before. I had zero experience in that kind of thing. So I just put as many hours in as I could, and eventually I learned enough that I could be in a position to teach people. And that's really what I found is what I even love more than storytelling, is teaching our staff and assisting them in doing their jobs. But first, I could do that, when I got there, we had 2 staff on medical leave and another had just been relieved of their duties. So we didn't have any staff in the editorial department. It was me, myself, and I doing everything, and it was difficult. But we were able to overhaul the staff, and thank God we had Gord Montgomery there. The guy is an absolute rock. I don't know if he does anything other than work all the time. I try to get him to rest, but he's at hockey games, at football games, at soccer games, at ringette games. I don't know if he'll ever stop, but I'm glad we have him. But we need to overhaul the editorial department almost completely. And that was a difficult process as well, but we've now got a great team in place, and I'm so happy we do. People like April Hudson and Karen Haynes are doing a great job of telling stories. Sometimes they have to do a little bit, sometimes you have to get in a little bit dirty stuff in journalism, and it's not fun for them, but I think they're enjoying their jobs as much as they can. Now, there are some challenges, obviously, for them, for myself. There's people trying to micromanage us all the time, which is always nice. There's the one issue about being in the media is you never feel like people are being absolutely forthright with you when you're speaking with them. They don't sometimes let themselves, you get the impression that they're being a little bit fake. And it's something that bothers me, I'll admit, that you never really feel like you're having a real conversation with someone when you're on the job. So building relationships is difficult in that aspect. And there's also one thing that I'm really passionate about is that we don't pay for news, and that's unfortunate. We'll never have we're not going to have a strong newspaper in this community if we're not paying for it. Salaries dwindle, we don't get raises. After I came out of my first job, I was in a worse economic position than I had been at university. I was in further debt, having worked for 2 years. The salaries the reporters are making these days are outrageously low, and it's really unfortunate. The newspaper is free, and that's never going to change. Thank God it's free that we can sell more advertising, but unless people start paying for news, newspapers will continue to die, and I can't promise that there's always going to be a newspaper in this community. That is kind of sad, and it's one of the reasons when I was thinking about doing this speech, is I don't think this will be my last classification speech. I think that I'll probably have more careers in my lifetime just because of the lack of future prospects in this industry, and it's so sad to see. But I still love what I do, and I get to wear many hats. I'm an editor, I'm a writer, a photographer, a graphic designer, I'm an IT guy, I do social media, so many things I don't have the training to do that I've had to learn, and it's been so much fun to actually learn something new every day, and I love it. And I have this supportive, amazing family who are always there for me. And another thing when I was thinking about writing this, I couldn't actually give my classification speech without talking about my family. because I think they have led me down the path to be a Rotarian. My mom and my dad are the hardest working people I know. My mom is the executive director of her local hospice association, and my dad is a truck driver who manufactures a spray that helps people with their arthritis on the side. He has really bad arthritis himself, and for a long time in my childhood it was really debilitating to the point that he couldn't shake someone's hand without being in excruciating pain. So he's worked his butt off to get that business off the ground. He's a remarkable man. I'm happy he's my father. And on top of that, his mother received the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee last year for his work in our community as well, for her work in our community as well. She's really our family matriarch. Everything comes from her. She immigrated from Romania when she was a child, and met her husband in Canada, who had also immigrated from Eastern Europe, but he burned his birth certificate, so we're not really sure where he's from. So when I was thinking about writing this, even if I have to give another one of these down the road, and I think I will, because I don't think this is my last stop in life. My family's impact will always remain the same, and this part of the speech will always remain the same, because without their guidance, I never would have gotten here. I wouldn't be standing here at all. I wouldn't think about things like volunteering. I wouldn't think about things like fundraising. It's thanks to my mom and my dad and my grandparents that I'm able to be here today, and I couldn't give the speech any other way. I couldn't close it any better way, I don't think. So thank you very much.
Tell us about your wife and kids.
They have yet to arrive in my life.
Take a little time off.
I'm relaxing for now. Anybody else?
Thomas, how do you spend, say, your work week?
Every day is pretty different. For instance, Mondays I go to town council meetings and stuff like playing. Wednesdays is our main production day, so that's when we're just doing layout and copy editing and trying to find all the errors that everyone points out all the time. Tuesdays is more of a prep and writing day for us. That's when we spend the majority of our day going over our story lists and figuring out what's going to be in the newspaper exactly. Thursdays and Fridays are more relaxing. I get to have meetings like this, which is nice. That's where I plan the majority of my interviews and researching is Thursday and Friday. And then weekends we have all sorts of events to go to. And it's different every day.
Thank you, Thomas. Just to add to his classification, I think Thomas' classification, he's also working on the club Twitter's account, social media. So for those of you that are on Twitter and following the Rotary Club of Spruce Grove account, Thomas does all the social media and tweeting. So thank you.